morning, the Foreign Minister jets into Baghdad to discuss Australia's role in defeating Islamic State militants, insisting ground troops won't be deployed.
We will only provide assistance at the invitation of and with the consent of the Iraqi government.
Also on Weekend Breakfast, Nigeria's government says hundreds of schoolgirls kidnapped by Islamic militants could be free by Tuesday.
Hong Kong's leaders agree to talks with pro-democracy activists as protest camps in the city are reclaimed.
And Wallabies coach Ewan McKenzie quits as his team suffers a heart-wrenching 1-point loss to the All Blacks.
Good morning. It's Sunday the 19th of October. I'm Eliza Harvey.
And I'm Andrew Gagan. Thanks so much for joining us.
The top stories this morning. The Foreign Minister, Julie Bishop, has met Iraqi officials to discuss Australia's role in the US-led coalition against Islamic State militants. Ms Bishop flew under heavy security into the Iraqi capital, Baghdad, which is increasingly under threat from the terrorist group. The Foreign Minister was welcomed by her counterpart, Ibrahim al-Jafari, and later told a news conference that Australia will not be sending ground forces into Iraq.
We've not been asked to, we've not offered to, and so I do not envisage that being part of our arrangements with Iraq. We will only provide assistance at the invitation of and with the consent of the Iraqi government.
US jets have again struck suspected Islamic State targets in the besieged Syrian town of Kobani. Fierce shelling by the insurgents has been hitting the town centre, and shelling has reportedly continued after the strikes. Islamic State militants have been battling Kurdish fighters for months to take control of the town near the Turkish border, but stepped-up coalition airstrikes have helped Kurds fend off the advance. The coalition has been bombing Islamic State targets in Iraq since August and extended the campaign to Syria in September.
The Prime Minister, Tony Abbott, has released a video statement as he prepares to fly to Indonesia. He takes off in half an hour, bound for the inauguration of the country's new president, Joko Widodo. He'll assume office at a time when diplomatic tensions with Australia have settled and a new code of conduct is in place after the recent spying scandal. Mr Abbott has also raised the prospect of stronger trade ties between the two countries.
Two-way trade with Indonesia is only $15 billion. In fact, our two-way trade with New Zealand, with just 4 million people, exceeds our current two-way trade with Indonesia and its 250 million people. This is why I've often said that our foreign policy needs a Jakarta focus rather than a Geneva one. As Prime Minister, my first overseas visit was to Jakarta, and this is my 4th visit to Indonesia.
To Nigeria, where there are reports this morning that hundreds of schoolgirls kidnapped by the rebel group Boko Haram could be released early this week. Sources close to the presidency say they could be returned to their families on Monday or Tuesday. The government raised hopes that the girls will be freed after striking a ceasefire deal with Boko Haram late last week. Well, since the abduction, Nigeria has twice falsely claimed to have rescued all or some of the girls.
Barack Obama has urged Americans to remain calm as fears of an Ebola outbreak continue to spread across the United States. 2 health workers in Texas have now been infected with the virus. The president made a televised address overnight in which he reminded Americans the risk to them is very low.
What we're seeing now is not an outbreak or an epidemic of Ebola in America. We're a nation of more than 300 million people. To date, we've seen 3 cases of Ebola diagnosed here. The man who contracted the disease in Liberia came here and sadly died. The 2 courageous nurses who were infected while they were treating him. Our thoughts and prayers are with them, and we're doing everything we can to give them the best care possible. Now, even 1 infection is too many. At the same time, we have to keep this in perspective. As our public health experts point out, every year thousands of Americans die from the flu.
Hong Kong's Chief Secretary has announced that the government will hold talks with leaders of the pro-democracy movement on Tuesday. Officials say the negotiations will last for 2 hours and will be televised. It comes as thousands of pro-democracy activists reoccupy some of their protest camps, sometimes clashing violently with police. The demonstrators have been occupying parts of the city for weeks, angered at China's curbs on who can stand in the next leadership election in 2017.
A man will face court later this morning following the bashing death of a man in Melbourne. 21-year-old student Joshua Hardy was allegedly thrown to the ground and kicked in the head at St Kilda. He was taken to the Alfred Hospital but died a short time later. A 27-year-old man was remanded in custody after being charged with murder. A second man has provided a statement to police but will not face any charges.
The West Australian Liberals have declared victory in former Treasurer Troy Buswell's recently vacated seat of Vass. Liberal candidate Libby Mettam has secured around 53% in the two-party candidate preferred vote, putting her on track to retain the seat for the party. Ms Mettam was the front-runner in the safe Liberal seat, vacated after the resignation of the hugely popular but troubled Mr Buswell last month.
Emergency crews in Perth have responded to a number of calls for assistance as wild weather has swept across the city. Residents in the northern suburbs were hardest hit by hail and strong winds. A section of the freeway was blocked due to flooding. More rain is on the way, but no hail. Strikes have killed hundreds of Islamic State militants in the battle for Kobani on the Turkey-Syria border.
Also ahead, we'll speak with the Agriculture Minister Barnaby Joyce on Weekend Breakfast. That's coming up very shortly.
And later, a close encounter between Mars and a comet named Siding Spring, which will swing by the red planet early tomorrow morning.
Let's take a look at the satellite image. Several lows and associated trough over southern and inland Western Australia are triggering showers and some heavy and potentially severe thunderstorms. Hot air is pushing into South Australia ahead of the system, while an approaching front is causing the odd light shower over Western Tasmania. Looking around the country, Queensland can expect some light showers, mostly on the coast, gusty southeasterly winds along the coast, lighter inland. For New South Wales, mild and generally dry throughout, gusty winds about the southeast. To Victoria, warm in the northwest, mild near the coast with a late cool change. A cool change for Tasmania with showers spreading throughout. In South Australia, it will be very hot to warm in the west, warm elsewhere. For Western Australia, very hot in the east, cool in the southwest, heavy showers and thunderstorms in the south. And for the Northern Territory, isolated showers in the northwest. Looking ahead to tomorrow's forecast for the capitals, sunny in Brisbane, the chance of a shower in Sydney, mostly sunny in Canberra, Melbourne, Hobart and Adelaide, and clearing showers in Perth and also Darwin. The front pages of today's Sunday newspapers having to say.
Victoria's Sunday Herald Sun is reporting on the brutal death of Joshua Hardy, who was bashed and kicked outside a fast food restaurant in Melbourne on Friday night. A 27-year-old man has been charged with his murder.
It's also made the front page in the Sunday Territorian. The 21-year-old victim was from a prominent Darwin family.
In Queensland, the Sunday Mail writes that two men have been arrested and charged with murder over the disappearance 40 years ago of Barbara McCulkin and her two daughters, 13-year-old Vicky and 11-year-old Leanne, who disappeared from their Brisbane home in January 1974.
Farmers in South Australia are reportedly abandoning the country fire service in droves to protest against the massive increases in the state government's emergency services levy. That's the lead in today's Sunday Mail.
The Sunday Age writes that a contentious plan to open a new coal fields in Latrobe Valley has been quietly put aside until after the Victorian state election because of public opinion. The paper writes that both the Labor and Liberal parties have sidelined environmental issues for the campaign.
Meet Lion-Hearted Bill, also known on the track as the Cleaner, the Tasmanian galloper, and his trainer Mick, pictured here on the cover of the Sunday Tasmanian, has won $850,000 in prize money. And next up is the $3 million WS Cox plate.
The Sun Herald in Sydney has an all-sporting front page with news of Sydney FC's victory over Western Sydney Wanderers.
And it's also sport on the front cover of the Sunday Telegraph. NRL star Jared Hayne and his dream of playing in the NFL in the US, and it's been given a huge boost. The Detroit Lions are reportedly among 6 teams believed to have expressed interest in Hayne.